Welcome back. And now for the news in detail, India has decided to take legal action against media outlets for reporting violence in occupied Kashmir. The crushing curfew and communication blackout by Indian forces in Kashmir has entered its seventh day. Indian Home Ministry sources have confirmed that legal action is being initiated against media outlets not towing New Delhi's line. Local and international media reported multiple cases of violence by Indian troops against peaceful protesters in Srinagar. Former head of Congress Rahul Gandhi has called for action over violence by Indian troops in the valley instead of gagging the media. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has said India is trying to impose its extremist Hindu supremacist ideology in occupied Kashmir. Khan said New Delhi is attempting to change the demography of Kashmir through ethnic cleansing. Indian Sikh leaders have asked the US to intervene over New Delhi's illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir. This comes after the Indian government stripped Kashmir of its special status by revoking Article 370. In a letter to the US President Donald Trump, Dal Khalsa head Harpal Singh Cheema said Sikhs strongly endorse Kashmiri's right to self-determination. Cheema said it is high time that the US-led mediation efforts, as any delay can be disastrous for both Kashmir and the region. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, Sikh leaders claimed India wants to reduce states to colonies by revoking Article 370. Israeli troops have killed another Palestinian near the Gaza border after the Eid prayers. The death toll in the past 24 hours has risen to 5. Palestine's health ministry has said 14 others were wounded as Israeli troops fired live ammunition and rubber bullets at the protesters. Thousands of Palestinians had gathered at the mosque for prayers of Eid AlAdha. Israeli police fired at the Palestinian worshippers to clear the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. The Saudi-led coalition in Yemen has launched a strike against separatists controlling Aden city after calling for a truce. This comes after the coalition in Yemen collapsed and the southern separatists took control of the crucial city of Aden. Aden is the temporary seat of the internationally recognized government in Yemen. Saudi state TV reported the coalition targeted an area that poses a direct threat to one of the government's important sites. Earlier, the Saudi Foreign Ministry called for an emergency meeting asking the separatists to end fighting and reunite. The Saudi Foreign Ministry said a ceasefire and talks were agreed on, but there has been no confirmation from the separatists. Syria's army has captured a strategically important town, Al-Hubayth, in the rebels' last major enclave in Idlib. This is the most significant advance the army has made in the province since the start of its offensive in April. The state media described the town as gateway to the south of Idlib. Earlier this week, the rebels acknowledged losing ground near Al-Hubayth, but have neither confirmed nor denied its complete capture. 70 fighters from both the sides have been killed so far after Syrian government scrapped a 3-day ceasefire for the region yesterday. Meanwhile, Russian media reported 120 rebels with heavy weaponry are moving towards Idlib. 5 people, including 3 UN staff members, were killed in a car bomb blast in the eastern Libyan city of Benghazi. The explosion came hours after Libya's government and Khalifa Haftar's eastern forces agreed to an Eid ceasefire till August the 13th. The Libyan army said 2 guards with the UN Libya mission were also killed and 10 people injured in the blast. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the attack, calling on all the parties to respect the truce. No group has claimed the responsibility yet. Turkish forces have killed 2 more Kurdistan Workers' Party militants in a counter-terror operation in northern Iraq. The Turkish Defense Ministry said the airstrikes destroyed a weapons cache and shelters used by the PKK. The ministry said the airstrikes on Gara region were conducted in coordination with Operation Claw. It said Ankara will continue to destroy weapon emplacements and shelters used by the terrorists. A total of 80 Kurd militants have been killed since the launch of counter-terrorism offensive. Ankara blames the PKK for the deaths of some 40,000 people, including women and children. 62 people have been killed after an overturned fuel tanker exploded in Tanzania. Officials said the victims died while siphoning fuel from the tanker some 200 kilometers west of Dar es Salaam. Regional Commissioner Stephen Kabwe said 70 others were critically injured. Kabwe said the number of deaths can rise as some of the victims were in critical condition and rushed to Morogoro Regional Hospital. An eyewitness said many people who were not stealing fuel also died. The death toll from a landslide triggered by heavy rains in Myanmar's Mon state has reached to 48. Officials said a deluge of mud engulfed 16 homes and a monastery in the village of Kai Pr Khon. He says that dozens of others were injured in the incident. Floods have also forced tens of thousands of people to flee their homes across the country. 32 people have been killed and 20 others missing in a landslide after Typhoon Lekima hit eastern China's Xinjiang province. Authorities have issued a high-level orange warning throughout the eastern region. Hundreds of flights and trains have been cancelled and 1 million people evacuated. Chinese state media says 3 million households have experienced a power blackout. Strong winds have destroyed 200 houses and over 66,000 hectares of farmland. 186 rescue teams, 36,000 firefighters and 8,400 fire engines have been assembled. North Korea has suspended all negotiations with South Korea over its joint military drills with the US in the Japan Sea. Foreign Ministry says the inter-Korean contact will be difficult unless the military exercises are stopped. Washington and Seoul kicked off largely computer-simulated small-scale exercises on Saturday for a 10-day run. They serve as an alternative to previous large-scale annual drills that were halted to expedite nuclear talks between Pyongyang and Washington. Pyongyang has called the exercises a rehearsal for war. North Korean media reported that Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un oversaw test firings of a new weapon system. This came hours after US President Trump claimed Kim had written him a letter with an apology for the recent missile tests. In Norway, police say the shooting at a mosque near Oslo is being treated as an attempted act of terror. One person was wounded when a white teenager opened fire at a mosque when Muslims were preparing for Eid prayers. Police Chief Arun Sujold said initial investigations showed the suspected appeared to hold far-right and anti-immigration views. Hours after the attack, the body of a young woman related to the suspect was found in a home in Bayram. Investigators are treating her death as suspicious and have opened a murder probe. In Hong Kong, police have fired tear gas to disperse people protesting against a controversial extradition bill for the 10th consecutive weekend. Thousands of activists occupied the airport arrival hall for a third day during the anti-government protests. The region's government suspended the bill, but now the demonstrators are demanding the resignation of city's leader, Carrie Lam. Lam has said rallies should be ended now as they are hurting the city's economy. More than 60,000 Russian opposition supporters have protested in Moscow against the mass detention of demonstrators. The protesters defied a crackdown to demand free and fair elections for Moscow city's legislature. The protesters staged the largest demonstrations since President Vladimir Putin returned to Kremlin in 2011. Protesters carried placards with anti-government slogans. Police detained senior opposition politician Lyubov Sobol ahead of the mass rally. Moscow Election Commission has disqualified several opposition figures from next month's local elections. More than 2,000 opposition activists were arrested during recent two demonstrations in Moscow. Tens of thousands of Romanians have taken to the streets of the capital Bucharest, demanding the government to step down. Protesters accuse the ruling Social Democrat government of massive corruption and attacks on the judiciary. More than 20,000 people, both from the diaspora and from within Romania, rallied outside government headquarters. Local media says the protest was organized and promoted by groups of Romanians working abroad. Despite scorching temperatures, they rallied demanding the cabinet's resignation. During the last year's protest, police crackdown allegedly injured more than 400 peaceful demonstrators. The protest commemorated the one-year anniversary of a violent police crackdown on protesters. Thousands have protested in Honduras to demand President Juan Orlando Hernandez's resignation for his alleged links with drug trafficking. Massive protests erupted after a report claimed President Hernandez's 2013 election campaign benefited from drug proceeds. Prosecutors alleged the president's brother, Tony Hernandez, used his influence to ensure safe crossings of traffickers. President Hernandez and his far-right National Party have denied the accusations. Hernandez claims he is the victim of a conspiracy. Muslims in many countries are celebrating Eid AlAdha today with religious fervor. The day is observed to commemorate the sacrifice by Prophet Ibrahim. Eid AlAdha celebrations start with Muslims offering Eid prayers and then sacrificing their cattle for God. The occasion is marked with charity and distribution of sacrificial meat to the poor. Eid begins after pilgrims across the world offer Hajj in Makkah. 8 British cyclists have paddled their way from London to Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj and raise money for charity along the way. More in this report.
The ride, dubbed Tour de Hajj, covered 4,000 miles across 17 countries in 60 days. The cyclists were raising money for a charity which aims to help building infrastructure in villages in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, South Africa and Uganda.
Since we crossed from Turkey to Egypt, it's kicking in now, the excitement. I'm looking forward to seeing the sign for Medina en route, and I think that will be the moment where I start, really getting excited.
With the goal of raising £500,000, the cyclists have so far collected £50,000 upon reaching Medina. The cyclists said the journey was long and the conditions were challenging, but they were determined to complete the tour.
Alhamdulillah, we've had bad weather. At the same time, we've had really hot weather. So I think, the elements of the heat, the rain, the climate change when you go up a certain level, when you go above the clouds, the oxygen levels are low. Sometimes we couldn't get, decent food in Europe. We couldn't get halal food. So there's many challenges.
The journey took the group of cyclists through London, Paris, Bulgaria and Cairo.
With rising rents in the big cities and changing lifestyles, a new way of sharing apartments, co-living is gaining ground. Startups take care of everything, including the roommates' social lives. This report has the details.
Nandita Iyer landed in New York from Bombay without knowing anyone, but she didn't want to live alone in a sketchy studio. So instead, she opted for a room in a co-living unit. She lives with roommates in one of the 14 apartments in a small building run by the housing startup Quarters.
I knew that New York City is where everyone comes from different places and they have their own journeys, and knowing people is very important. So I figured living in a co-living space, I'd get a chance to meet new people from different backgrounds. And that's exactly what happened. When I came to Quarters, I met people from such different backgrounds, and I became very good friends with them, and then I became friends with their friends.
Group living arrangements are not new. Many people have lived with roommates in student dormitories or retirement homes. But with housing costs skyrocketing in major cities and amid changing lifestyles, startup companies are offering to take care of everything for renters. This includes the social life of their residents.
Everything is done online, from touring the place in 3D and up to signing the lease itself. And then moving in, you just move in. We coordinate everything for you. You come. The entire product is completely fully furnished.
Demand for these new group housing arrangements is on the rise, especially among young people aged 18 to 35, the millennials. The new players include Quarters, Common, Ollie, Star City, X-Social Communities, The Collective, and We Live. They're focusing on millennials for now, but hope to do the same things for young families.
There are definitely economies and urban environments where I think co-living could become the new co-working in terms of how important and how much fast it grows. And I could see it in certain European cities, where there's a lot of influx of new people. And
the companies say with smaller rooms, co-living is 15 to 30% cheaper than a studio in the same area, but that does not necessarily make them more affordable than a traditional roommate situation.
Steel giant ArcelorMittal strives to clean up and turn around Italy's most polluting plant, while activists and residents urge its closure. Experts cited by prosecutors have said 11,550 people died from toxic emissions over 7 years. This report has the details. On Italy's southern coast, rock climbers scale a giant canopy in Taranto to build the world's biggest iron ore park cover. Steel giant ArcelorMittal strives to clean up and turn around the country's most polluting plant. Beyond the factory lie the sea and sandy beaches, though only hardy souls dare to swim or eat mussels from there. The site in southern Italy's Zulia region, formerly owned by UA, is at the heart of a huge legal battle.
At the beginning of the year, there was condemnation by the European Court of Human Rights, which said that these decrees did not guarantee the health of citizens, and therefore the state should have taken note of this sentence and acted in a different way from where it did.
ArcelorMittal is spending 1.2 billion euros to curb pollution at the site by 2024. It was given a legal immunity to bring the plant up to environmental standards, but the Italian parliament revoked that in June.
This is the first important action being taken. It is to avoid, prohibit or prevent any dust flying due with conditions that we may have in the region. So this is a program that will be 80% complete in 2020.
Lié aux conditions, par exemple, de vent.
As Taranto suffers from record unemployment, some feel everything should be done to save the steel works. But ArcelorMittal has struggled to win hearts, while the company pledges to slash dioxin and dust emissions to below EU limits. They cannot be eliminated entirely. Families have been hit by abnormal levels of tumors and respiratory diseases.
There are two possible causes, pesticides or dioxin. Since we do not live near fields and are careful about hygiene of fruits and vegetables, impossible. On the other hand, we live next to the factory that has been dumping dioxin day and night for years. 1 + 1 makes 2. No need to do some study to prove it.
Many residents accuse the government and the plant's previous owners of willful negligence. Another business updates. Volatility in China's yuan since August is a normal market reaction to escalating trade frictions stoked by the US. Director General of the People's Bank of China's International Department, Zhu Jun, said Washington has only itself to blame. He said the currency's instability is a consequence of the US's decision to further raise tariffs. The US labeled China a currency manipulator after the yuan dropped through a key support level to its lowest point in more than a decade. Zhu Jun said the labeling violates basic common economic sense and international consensus and is unconvincing. football, Raheem Sterling has scored a hat-trick as Manchester City beat West Ham United in their English Premier League opener. Burnley also scored a win against Southampton, while Everton drew their match against Crystal Palace. Defending champions Manchester City thrashed West Ham 5-0. Sergio Aguero and Gabriel Jesus netted goals for City along with Sterling. In another match, Burnley beat Southampton 3-0 thanks to a brace from Ashley Barnes. Everton drew against Crystal Palace as both the teams missed sitters in their opener. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For further updates, stay tuned to Indus.